these remarks that he made, they're so strange that he admires the basic Chinese communist dictatorship. And we all thought that was just the surfer dude with another gaffe, another trust fund baby. But no, this was actually what he thought.
Pierre Poilievre, leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, and I think if everything goes well, the next Prime Minister of Canada. Thank you for taking the time today to talk with me and talk with Canadians.
It's great to be with you, and thanks for joining the nation's capital, and looking forward to seeing more of your documentaries.
I appreciate that. Well, I think we have to start with the breaking news, obviously, that dropped last night. It's been reported, or it was reported by Global News, I think broke the story. Liberal MP Han Dong, who's been the center of the election interference allegations that have been forward election meddling, who Justin Trudeau was vigorously defending up until, I guess, yesterday. Realistically, it was reported by Global News that he secretly met with senior Chinese diplomats and basically advised them or asked them to not release the two Canadian hostages, known colloquially as the two Michaels, who were then being held by the Chinese communist regime. So my question to you is, how serious are these allegations, and is it now time for a public inquiry?
Very, and yes. They are extremely serious, the most serious, and now we need to know what Justin Trudeau knew and when. When did he first hear reports that one of his own MPs, whom he had been defending, was allegedly telling the Chinese government to keep two Canadians in captivity, potentially in torture and in other mistreatment overseas in China? We need to know when the Prime Minister first learned of this. It's hard to believe that intelligence officials his own intelligence officials would have told the media this before telling him. Mm-hmm. He had to have known. He needs to cough up the truth now and launch a full public inquiry where he and everyone else in the know testify under oath.
Now, I wonder, to get your take on this, this isn't the first kind of Trudeau China thing. You actually talked about it with me when we did an interview a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. First, there was the dragging his feet on banning Huawei from Canada's 5G network. There was this weird insistence on trying to get our COVID-19 vaccine from China, which put us, and they're only one of any of our allies to try to do this, it put us at the back of the line for all of the others. There was his whole statement about admiring China's quote-unquote basic dictatorship. If anyone questioned the election meddling allegations, he called them a racist. Why, in your mind, is he refusing to call a public inquiry? And is there something else going on here?
He's keeping secrets. He obviously knows and knew a lot more than he's confessed. What the public now realizes because of leaked CSIS documents is that the Beijing communists wanted Trudeau to stay in power, and they were prepared to interfere in our elections to keep him there. We need to know why a foreign dictatorship was so determined to have Justin Trudeau as the Prime Minister. We need to know when did he learn of their active involvement. We need to know the details of the $200,000 donation that Beijing gave the Trudeau Foundation. We need to know what role that Beijing played into supporting Mr. Trudeau's leadership campaign, his subsequent 3 election campaigns. We need to know all these things, and the only way to get to those answers is through a public judicial inquiry where people are forced to testify under oath. And I think that he's afraid to tell the truth. Like, I've asked him, for example, would the Liberal Party give back any money that it got from this foreign dictatorship? And he won't answer the question. And it's like an obvious question. Like, if you ask me, if the Conservative Party ever got money from some foreign dictatorship somewhere, would the party forfeit the money? Well, the answer, of course, is yes. Like, it's such an obvious and easy answer to give, but he won't give it. His behavior has been bizarre, evasive, and as you say, he's compromised in his decision making. He waited for years to ban Huawei. This caused our Five Eye allies to question whether they could trust sharing intelligence with us. He refused to vote in favor of recognizing the genocide of the Uyghur Muslims until very recently and under pressure. He originally wanted a free trade agreement with China, which is obviously impossible when it comes to a country that doesn't actually practice for any free trade. And finally, these remarks that he made, they're so strange that he admires the basic Chinese communist dictatorship. Now, we all thought that was just the surfer dude with another gaffe, another trust fund baby. You could have pictured him at Nice smoking on the beach, smoking a joint and saying stupid things that he thought sounded smart. But no, this was actually what he thought. And it's funny, I don't think he's ever renounced that comment. He's never come back and said, no, I spoke out of turn, I didn't mean it. He stuck by it and later said that he thought Fidel Castro was a great leader. This is the kind of radical ideology to which he subscribes. He inherited it from his father. His father was a great admirer of foreign communist regimes. His father admired Maoism, even when Mao presided over the biggest slaughter and starvation in human history. And his father was soft on Nazism and on Sovietism. So he comes from a tradition of admiring authoritarian, communist, totalitarian regimes. We see it in a small way in his politics. Bill C-11, which I know you want to talk about, to censor the internet, control what people see and say on the internet. So I think he has a weird ideological and personal fascination with these authoritarian governments, and that plays out not only in his interaction with the regimes themselves, but in the authoritarian policies that he endorses here at home.
Now, you mentioned Bill C-11, which is a perfect segue to my next question, so I appreciate that. I think that in a day and age where, I hope you don't take this personally, a lot of politicians change their political beliefs kind of like actors change their clothes. You have been remarkably consistent, and I would say, politically fearless, really, in your consistency and unabashed defense of freedom of speech, whether it's Jordan Peterson, for example, or your staunch opposition to Bill C-11. Why is free speech so important for you personally, and what is the threat in your mind that Bill C-11 poses to the free expression of Canadians?
So first of all, why is free speech important? Because all the justifications for censorship are based on the idea that if people think and speak freely, they will share dangerous thoughts. Mm-hmm. That's the idea, right? And that sometimes they will do it because they are malintended, and sometimes because they are misinformed. That's the theory. But if you believe that people could be misinformed and malintended, then the same censors who would control information would have those same vices themselves, right? And so if you don't believe that man can express himself freely, he doesn't have the judgment to express himself freely, how can he have the judgment to control what others express? And the answer is he can't. There is no special elite class made of better clay who are more enlightened and virtuous. We're all human. And so are people going to say the wrong thing? Of course they are. Mm-hmm. But the way to solve that is for those bad things to collide with good things and have the good triumph over the bad through persuasion, not coercion. That is what freedom of speech allows. It's like a giant cauldron, freedom of speech is, that burns off bad ideas. It's not the bad ideas never happen, it's that they get burned off in the debate. Mm-hmm. But the censors want to prevent that debate from ever happening. Mm-hmm. And so I'll give you an example. As Trudeau came out the other day and he said, we have to control the internet because otherwise people will believe the earth is flat. And he went on to ramble incoherently about all these, how never before in human history, but never before the internet did anyone think the earth is flat. Well, there are actually all kinds of examples of civilizations that thought the earth was flat. So he was spreading misinformation. Mm-hmm. Ironically, this is the guy that wants to censor out misinformation. Mm-hmm. So the question is, who watches the Watchmen? Mm-hmm. Like these people who are supposedly going to protect us all from saying the wrong thing, who watches them? Mm-hmm. And the answer is no one. It is strictly about control. And that is the purpose of the Trudeau ideology. It's to concentrate control in the hands of the fewest people possible so that they can determine our destiny. I believe in dispersing control, putting people in charge of their own lives, making the country the freest in the world, and that requires first and foremost free speech, because if you don't have free speech, you don't have any form of freedom.
And can you speak a little bit to how Bill C-11 directly impacts that?
Well, it gives the CRTC control over social media algorithms to promote and demote content based on what it arbitrarily considers to be Canadian content. We've been debating C-11 now for almost 3 years. It was introduced in the fall of 2020. I think I was the first person to speak out against it in the House of Commons at the time. And in that 3-year period, they've never been able to define what Canadian content is, and even though that is the supposed purpose of the bill. Like, if a mom from Mississauga posts online about a bottle drive for the local soccer club, is that Canadian content? She's in Canada. It's about Canada. The money is being raised for a Canadian team. It's entirely Canadian. But is that Canadian content? Well, probably not, because she won't be registered with CRTC as a provider of Canadian content. Meanwhile, CBC plagiarizes a story in Washington, D.C. That they saw on CNN. It's a story originally written by an American about America in America, but it will be considered Canadian content. Why? Because it's the CBC, and of course the bureaucracy in Ottawa will endorse it because they are part of the approved class of Canadiana. So of course, Canadian content is not the purpose of this bill. The purpose is to concentrate control by allowing a secretive group of liberal bureaucrats and insiders decide what is Canadian and what is not, and use that as an excuse to determine what pops up in your newsfeed. And they say, well, we're not going to censor anything, but it's a zero-sum game. If one piece of content gets pushed up, every other piece of content needs to be pushed down, right? So by pushing forward all of the central Canadian establishment elite content, they'll push everything down lower, and that's the idea. And it's to keep them on top and everyone else on the bottom. So I cannot wait to repeal this bill when I'm Prime Minister. It is one of my top priorities, along with defunding the CBC and bringing back freedom of speech and expression for Canadians.
Well, I think that's great. One of the lines I used in my recent video when it comes to all this talk about free speech and censorship and misinformation, it's like they read Animal Farm in 1984.
Yes.
Not as a warning for authoritarianism, but an instruction manual of how to govern.
That's so true. And the pigs have definitely taken over the house, that's for sure. Everyone's equal, but some are more equal than others.
Yeah, exactly. Now switching just to the opioid epidemic in British Columbia. I mean, it's incredibly sad. It's actually shocking when you think of the numbers. 2,000 people dead last year in BC.
Yeah.
2,000, mainly young people, significantly young people. You also have crime, especially violent crime, on the rise across the country, especially on mass transit. And you have the downtown east side. I mean, you called it hell on earth. It's like a zombie apocalypse, or certainly more like a zombie apocalypse than anything like the streets of a first world country. What is going on, in your opinion? And what do you think of Justin Trudeau's decision to decriminalize hard drugs and push for a so-called safe supply of things like cocaine, fentanyl, and even crystal meth?
Yeah, well, first of all, it is hell on earth to anyone who's been there. You've got 6 people dying every day in British Columbia of overdoses, a 300% increase in overdose deaths since Justin Trudeau took office, more than doubling of overdose deaths since the province first declared the opioid crisis a public health emergency, and worst of all, it's actually getting worse. And this is an important point, because we were all told, okay, the opioid deaths are on a rise because of the COVID lockdowns, and that was credible. The COVID lockdowns were excessive and they destroyed mental health. But what we're seeing is, as we are moving further and further away from the lockdowns, overdose deaths are actually increasing. So when I landed in Nanaimo a week and a half ago, 3 things happened in the first 5 minutes. So one, guy in the plane walked up to me, opened up his phone and said, "This is a picture of my backyard camera. 12:48 a.m., couple of meth addicts in the yard with large daggers and bats foraging around to steal things, but carrying weapons just in case I walked into my backyard, they could stab me." Then I found out that a gentleman had his tools stolen by the tent city occupants in Nanaimo. He went to get his tools back. They shot him, so he was in a coma. And then I picked up the copy of the local Nanaimo newspaper, which reported that overdose deaths in Nanaimo have doubled from 11 in January of 2021 to 22 this year. This is all a direct result of the NDP Liberal policy of decriminalizing hard drugs, using taxpayer money to flood the streets with opioids and other drugs, and the catch and release bail system. And so what is happening is that the so-called safe supply that are paid for by taxpayers, what's happening is it's not powerful enough to keep people high. So they take the addicts take those drugs, the hydromorphones and other types, they sell them to kids. And then they use the profits to buy fentanyl, which is 100 times more powerful than heroin. The kids get high off the hydromorphine for a while, but then it's not strong enough for them either. So then they go back to the same addicts and say, I'm tired of buying this stuff. Can you find me where the really powerful stuff is? And then they end up going to a party, taking fentanyl, their lungs drop, and they're dead at 17 years old. That could be any of our kids. This is not just homeless youth. This is like suburban kids who are otherwise doing well in their lives, get hooked on the opioids and lose their lives. This is a disastrous policy. And frankly, the other thing we should comment on, Aaron, is the misery industry. So what I learned when I first spoke out against this, the hate and vitriol that came at me was like I've never seen it. And you know what I realized? It's from a bunch of people who are profiting off this misery. There's a whole industry that has grown up around the addiction crisis. There is all of these activists and so-called experts, public health agencies, interest groups that are getting grants to help with safe supply and other buzzwords. They're making a fortune, and they're supporting themselves by keeping this going. I'm also curious to know, how much money are the drug companies making off of the safe supply the government is buying to flood the streets with drugs? We shouldn't be profiting those companies. We should actually sue them. So here's my solution. I talked a lot about the problem. Solution. One, we've got to ban hard drugs. Two, we have to invest in treatment and recovery inpatient. Three, we need to sue Big Pharma for having originally caused the crisis by spreading the drugs across North America and lying to the medical system about the addictiveness and lethality of those drugs. And I want to collect billions of dollars and put that money into the treatment and recovery of our people so we can bring home our brothers, sisters, friends, and neighbors drug-free.
I just think it's amazing. I just want to touch on, you talked about the drug companies, Purdue, and suing them as British Columbia is doing for basically misinforming people about the lethality and the addictiveness and flooding the streets full of these opioids, which is exactly what they're now proposing they do with Safe Supply.
Right.
They basically changed the name on the pill bottle from Purdue to the government of British Columbia.
Right.
Or the government of Canada in the case of Trudeau.
Yeah.
Final question for you.
Yeah.
Being from BC, another huge issue, cost of living. I mean, it's an issue across the country, but I think probably it feels worse in BC anyways, whether it's inflation, food inflation, the price of gas. It was $1.80 in Victoria when I left.
Yeah.
And then the price of housing. I'm 33. And it seems like the longer you wait, the more money you save up to buy a house, the further you get away from actually being able to do it and get into the market. So what do you think the problem is, and what do you think the Trudeau government is doing wrong, and how would you turn things around?
Well, three things. We need to bring home lower prices by canceling the carbon tax and the inflationary deficits. It's two powerful paychecks. Bring home powerful paychecks by lowering taxes to reward work. And three, bring homes people can afford by removing the gatekeepers to free up land and build more homes. So let's go through them one at a time. We have $500 billion of deficits that have bid up the cost of the goods we buy and the interest we pay. You print more money, more dollars chase fewer goods, you've got higher prices, and that's why everything is so expensive. We've got to cap government spending, cut government waste, defund, for example, the CBC to save $1 billion, and bring in a new law that says the government has to find $1 of savings for every new dollar of spending. That's how we're going to get rid of the inflationary deficits. Second, we have to get rid of the carbon tax to lower gas, heat, and grocery bills. The Liberals and NDP want to triple that tax. I'll get rid of it. That's how we bring home lower prices. Bringing home powerful paychecks means making work pay again. We've got a war on work today. We punish people for working. They lose up as much as 80 cents a dollar in clawbacks and taxes when they go from, say, earning $60,000 to $61,000. So you're punishing people for working. And I want to bring home a country that works for the people who work by reforming and cutting income tax so people bring home more of each dollar they earn. Finally, bringing homes people can afford. We have there's a very simple reason why we have among the most expensive real estate in the world, and why our real estate is actually about almost double the cost of American real estate. This is incredible. They have 10 times the people on a smaller landmass, and yet it's cheaper to buy a home in the States than it is in Canada. Why? We have the fewest homes per capita in the G7, even though we have the most land to build on. In fact, the number of houses per capita in Canada has been going down since 2016 under Justin Trudeau. Why? Because government gatekeepers prevent construction. It takes as much as 7 or 8 years to get a building permit. We rank 64th in the OECD for the time it takes to get a building permit. We have, in BC, in Vancouver, red tape adds $650,000 to the cost of every house. 650 grand. This is insane. And yet what is Trudeau doing? He's boosting funding for municipal bureaucracies, the very gatekeepers that are blocking home construction. I'm going to fine them. I'm going to punish them. I'm going to make them pay a price if they block housing construction. And Trudeau accused me yesterday in the House of wanting to fight with municipal leaders. You're damn right I want to fight with big city mayors who stand in the way of housing. They're the ones who are responsible for 35-year-olds living in their parents' basements. I do want to fight with anyone who forces a 35-year-old who did everything right to live in his mom's basement. That's ridiculous. And I'm going to cut back on infrastructure money for big city mayors that gatekeep. But there'll be a carrot as well. Those that get out of the way and accelerate home building will get more infrastructure money. So fine those that block building, boost for those that build more. I'm going to require every federally funded transit station be pre-approved for high-density apartments so youth and seniors can live next to the bus or train. And I'm going to sell off 15% of the 37,000 federal buildings the government has to turn that into affordable housing. So that's the plan. We need to add millions of new homes so that it's affordable, and I'm going to bring homes workers can afford.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing the new 2-bedroom suites in the former building at the CBC.
Yes.
And I, again, really appreciate it.
Do they have a headquarters in Vancouver as well?
I'm sure they got a couple buildings. Maybe I'll get in line for that.
You're on the island. So.
Yeah, I'm on the island, so maybe not so much. But I really appreciate it, taking the time to talk to not only me, but more importantly to Canadians. So really appreciate it, Pierre.
Thanks very much for the conversation. And listen, it's time to bring it home. We've got a great country with incredible potential. We just have to unleash the human spirit in this by making Canada the freest nation on earth.
Sounds good. Couldn't agree more.
All right.